Hello and welcome to the Leverage Podcast. I'm Paul Richard, and I have Riley Smith with us today on the other end at eXp Realty. Welcome, Riley. It's good to have you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is super exciting.
I'm super excited as well, and real estate is always on my mind, and so I'm excited to hear your version. I was fortunate enough to hear you do a spotlight in one of our groups about 6 months ago, I think, and understand what you're doing in the investment side of the house. And I'm super excited to get, that information out there. I think that would be an interest of many, many people that are going to watch this broadcast. So, but let's start out with the first question is, tell us a little bit about you, your background. I mean, talk about family, career. What brought you to where you are today? Give us a little background.
Yeah, so I guess it's a long story short, but I'm from Seattle. That's kind of where all my family is right now. I moved down to Missouri back in 2018 to go to Evangel University, and so I ended up going there. I ended up meeting a girl, and well, so we're still together to celebrate our 4-year anniversary. Um,
Yay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. Springfield has a weird way of sucking you in.
I met a girl from the university there as well and married her 7 years ago. So I have a similar story.
And so, yeah, so I guess how I got here was, I guess to get into real estate was I had a sales job in the mall, and someone came in and we started talking, and she was actually an agent, Rachel Countryman. I'm not sure if
I know
you,
Rachel. I do.
yeah, so she was my sponsor. She got me into real estate, and it took me a little while until I finally got my license. But that's kind of how I got into it. And I remember just talking to her. One of the things I remember was she told me that 90% of agents were bad, right? And that kind of shocked me.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, real so as I've gotten into it longer, I've realized, man, it's all about problem solving. That's just what I enjoy doing. So I do
hmm
things very unique that a lot of agents just don't know about or aren't educated about.
Very good. What was your degree in at Evangel? What did you get your degree in?
Organizational leadership.
Organizational leadership. What exactly is that? I'm interested to find out.
I don't even know. It's
Ah,
it's it's very broad. It's a lot of like business, leadership, communication kind of skills. It wasn't for anything specific. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Uh,
okay.
so that's kind of why I was like, this is easy, simple. I could do it.
Understood. Understood. Yeah. It keeps you moving forward, but then you choose what you're going to do, right? So understood very, very much. Okay. Well, awesome. So then you met Rachel, you got licensed. What year did you get licensed?
It was late of 2021, early 2022. I
Okay. Okay. So COVID was in full force at that point, right?
think it was like right after COVID. So maybe I think it was closer to the end of 2022 being in 2023, actually, now that I'm thinking
Oh, it
about it.
was. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit, it was tapering off at that point. Yeah, absolutely. So did you start out as a buyer's agent or were you doing something else? What did you started out on a team, right? Or no?
No, actually. So I ended up, I was working full time. I think I just finished school. I was working full time. I was kind of doing this real estate on the side. I got my license strictly for like the investing side. I just didn't know
Okay.
what that looked like. So I did a lot of, I was mostly a buyer's agent, just showing houses, all that fun stuff, just kind of learning the ropes. And that's kind of how we got started into the real estate. And then end of 2024, summer of 2024 is when I quit my W-2 job and just jumped into real estate full time.
I see. Okay. Very good. So you were able to justify the income at that point to stay in it and that.
Yeah, and I was also like passionate about real estate, so I got to a point where, I was willing to take the risk. Um, I mean, I think you can't quit if you're passionate about something if you stay in it long enough and just be consistent. So I
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to get myself an out, so I just stuck in long enough, and now I'm still here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so the investing side, define what area of investing you started out in, and is that the same investing area that you're doing now?
Yeah, I guess traditional. I guess to so people can understand is traditional traditional real estate investing is typically through a bank, right? You go through, if you're fix and flipping, you go through a bank. They want to see 20-25% down. Um, they want to see you have skin in the game. A lot of times they want you to see you have income. Experience definitely helps. And if you're trying to buy rental properties, get approved for a DSCR loan, um, you have to put 20-25% down. Um, and that's great. And I think it's good for a lot of people, but for someone like me starting off, I just quit my W-2 job. I didn't have really consistent income in real estate. I wanted to fix and flip really bad when I got into it, and after talking to dozens and dozens of lenders, I I realized I kept on getting the same feedback. I had no experience and I had no money, right? And so that's very hard to get in real estate. So
Hmm.
that's kind of when I learned into the non-traditional side of real estate. So like creative finance, where you could buy properties without banks, and then a wholesaling, where instead of flipping a property, you're just flipping the contract. So those are kind of the two ways I got into real estate, and I still do it to this day.
Very good. So walk us through a transaction. So how do find the property? Obviously, you don't have to give away all your secrets. Just give us a high level. Walk us through from the beginning when you're first, searching, and I'm sure you're searching all the time to find those, all the way through to the final part of that. How does that work in your world?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many ways to find, real estate deals. I mean, you could find deals on market, through agents, Zillow, Realtor.com. You could do a lot of like door knocking, cold calling. Like I did a lot of that starting off because I didn't have necessarily the funds. So I was the sucker running around on a Friday night at like 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning, putting bandit signs out on the corners of neighborhoods and streets. I've done the door knocking, cold calling, direct mail, all that stuff, and then I ended up switching to inbound sourcing. So this is where people kind of come to me. So I do like Facebook ads. I do like PPL, so like pay per lead. So I go to companies. I can search like, okay, I want Greene County or Springfield, and then I could buy leads there. So you're actually talking to motivated sellers, and that's kind of how I do all my lead generation now.
Okay. So right now you're doing PPL primarily or something of that
Yeah,
nature?
and Facebook ads. Those are kind of the two.
Facebook ads. Okay. And when you're doing that, so how does that work? You're putting it out there. Are they calling you? Are they direct messaging you? How are they responding? What's the method
Yes, when it comes
typically?
to paper lead companies, like iSpeed Lead is a huge one. Property leads, there's Lead Zolo, there's Real Estate Bees. A lot of times, you could go in and search up like a certain area, right? Like say if I want Springfield, Missouri, I could go through a search of Springfield, and it'll pop up all the leads they have in Springfield currently, and you could go through and see kind of what the motivation is, like personal reasons, financial reasons, relocating, downgrading, divorce. So a lot of these sellers I'm working with are distressed, where maybe going through an agent just isn't necessarily the best option for them.
I
And
see.
so when I purchase a lead from one of these PPL providers, it gives me their contact information, their email, their phone number, the address of the property, and that's kind of when I make my first contact. As once I have that information, I give the seller a call and just hop on a phone conversation, see if I'm a good fit. Because it goes two ways. I'm not here to force anyone to sell. If I'm not a good fit, I'm going to say I'm not a good fit. Hey, no, I think listing with an agent might be a great option for you. So it's all about problem solving, all about helping sellers. That's kind of how I do the lead generation for the PPL. And then Facebook ads, it's just a form. They see my ad, they submit a form, like your name, email, address, your timeline, and then kind of the reason why you're selling. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward, nothing crazy.
Got it. So how does the conversation go on your opening contact with them?
Yeah, so a lot of investors start off learning MTCP. Are you familiar with it?
Walk me
So
through it.
yeah, so this is, I guess, the very traditional way of doing it, and it's like finding the motivation, finding MTCP, so motivation, then the timeline, then the condition, and then price. And that's kind of like the formula that I started with learning, and I found that was very ineffective and efficient. So when I'm calling to sellers, one, they're motivated because I'm paying for these leads. So typically, how I start these conversations is I just ask, hey, I just want to verify, are you still selling, right? Because if they're not selling, I don't want to, waste their time. And I don't want to waste my time. So I just kind of get that out the way. And then the second question I ask is, what price do you have in mind? Because if I ask that last, I could be on a conversation with the seller for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, and then realize the price just doesn't make sense for an investor. So I just wasted their time. I just wasted my time, having a conversation with 45 minutes an hour, just to find out not. So in order to kind of like weed out a lot of those people and just realizing, hey, I'm not a good fit, I ask price. Like that's my second question. What's your price? Because then that determines kind of if their motivation levels a little bit, and then also figure out if they're asking retail, maybe an agent, is a better solution for you. Then I might dig a little deeper, kind of what's going on with if they've talked to agents before. So those are kind of the two first questions I ask, and then I'll just kind of dig into motivation. Why are they selling? Because really that comes down to that.
Sure. Now, are you picking up on that conversation since you could list it? Are you interested in setting a listing appointment with them at that point if the motivation seems enough, but the price point is at retail?
Yeah, typically I wanna schedule a walkthrough if it's down the road or if it's a listing opportunity where they're just really set on retail price. I'll just say, hey, a lot of times, I just don't have the time to necessarily list, and it's not my really focus. So I'll just hand them off to people, like Rachel Countryman or Kathy Bonham. I'll just send them referrals, so they could do that. I mean, they love that. I'm more of the investing side. So I'm all
Sure,
about
sure.
collabing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And um, if you got something in Branson you want to do, let me know. I'll work with you on that. Uh, well, awesome. So that's your initial conversation. You're basically, I guess, you're doing some form of triage at that point on is this the right fit for me? That type of thing. How many of those would you say you'd go through before you get somebody that's really a good hit for you? You're going through 100 to 1. What's the ratio?
In terms of good conversations, it's probably one out of, maybe 30, you know.
Okay.
Just like a solid conversation, maybe like one, 2 out of 30. For like a signed agreement, it's probably 130, 140 out of 40 people. I mean, so if I call 100 people, I should probably, have 2 to 4 conversations and, 2 agreements signed.
Okay. So roughly 2% is
Yeah.
ultimately your closing rate, if you will, or they turn into a valid deal at that point. Is that right?
I think so, around there. And I need to do better at keeping track of KPIs.
Yeah, and that's okay. I was just curious because most online lead systems, unless they're totally nurture and they're handing them off to you when they're ready to list or ready to buy some property that's been identified, at that point, you're gonna end up somewhere below 3% close rate, if you will, somewhere in that range. especially online, like you say, buyers. Some you have no idea. Half of them are poking around just because they saw something that was interesting, and then etc. That seems to be a good ratio. So you've got to sift a lot of sand to get the gold at that point, right?
Yeah, because I can have a lot of conversations, right? Because I'm talking to motivated sellers. It just, may not be a good fit. They weren't necessarily motivated enough. An agent was a better option for them. So it's when you do this type of lead generation, it's you have a lot more reps in, right? So you're talking to a lot more sellers overall. So if I was doing like outbound sourcing and just like pulling a list, and just like cold calling, it's going to be like I remember it was maybe like every 200 people I would actually have like a good conversation. So it's a huge difference.
Now, is would that be total cold calling? You're just calling like a circle prospecting or something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like pulling a list. Yeah, like I'd pull a
Yeah,
list of like maybe expireds or vacants or tired landlords or
yeah.
tax defaults or foreclosures and those types of lists. So, and a lot of those people, like when you're cold calling, they may not be motivated. You'll get the I'm not selling, the no, don't call me back, the screw you, all that stuff. So,
Sure, sure. Got it. So, how many? Just to give an idea, for you today, which you're very good at what you do, you've had a lot of, a couple of years to really hone down your process and make it better and better and more efficient. At this point, it may vary by month, but approximately how many conversations per month are you having to get to that two or so per hundred?
I think I need to keep track of my KPIs better.
It's okay. Give me
Yeah,
a hip shot. Give me a rim shot. Yeah. What do you think?
I call, I guess on a daily basis, I'll call, depending on the day, what I have. On a
Sure.
good day, I'll try to make like 100 to 130 calls
Okay.
a day. And that
Let's
doesn't mean,
dig into that.
and a lot of it's
Yeah.
like
So is that
following up.
dials? Is that
Yeah, it's
dials?
dials. Yeah, it's dials.
Okay. 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 Good. Good. And that's what I'm wondering. So because I may have mentioned this to you when we talked earlier. So for 6 or 7 months, I was attempting to get people in the networking Navy on my podcast, right? Did I tell you about that? So I would
I
hand
think so
out,
briefly.
even when I visited up at your ship, I handed out an invite, it had a QR code. You could sign up. It had an explanation and everything of what it was. You know how many I got in 6 months?
Like two,
About
three.
five or
Okay.
six. Yeah, yeah. And I was handing them out weekly to hundreds of people. And then I bought an auto dialer, Mojo Cells. I don't know if you're familiar with
Okay.
Mojo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which I used to use for expired listings. And then I plugged in everybody in the networking group, hit the triple dial button, and in 3.5 hours, I booked almost 30 podcasts.
That's awesome.
You know, and so it's a contact game, right? It is a contact game. And I know if I had to sit there and dial every one of those numbers and wait for it to ring, 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 I would drive myself. I have no patience for that.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have to have a tool that forces me to hit the button and I've got to watch it like a hawk. And
Mm.
of course, I live in Branson, just south of you, and we're in a big where there's timeshare going on, and that's what they do, right? It's a predictive dialer, and you're just calling out. In this case, it's not. I don't consider it necessarily a cold call because you and I share something in common, and that's the networking. So I consider it kind of a warm call. Plus, I'm not selling you on something. I'm offering a free service, right? So that's a little bit
Yeah.
different too. But to have it that way. So thus here you are today, right? So
Yeah.
that's how that works. Yet again, I even had this conversation 10 minutes before you and I jumped on this podcast with another lady in one of my networking groups. It's a contact sport. You got to get out there. I mean, you and I, in essence, make it look easy, right? Because we do it daily. It's in our DNA now. We can just, we can have conversations pretty easily. without stuttering and stammering and not knowing what to say. We get stumped every once in a while, right? But at the overall, we can do that. We don't have a fear of the phone necessarily. We all have some phone aversion, okay,
Yeah.
admittedly, in that regard. Did you have much phone aversion when you first started doing this, or no?
No, not at all. Like I'm a huge people.
Okay,
I'm a huge people person, right? So having a
yeah,
conversation just comes naturally to me. Cold calling, talking to random people. Hey, do you want to sell? I remember the first time I made a cold call was with Rachel Countryman in a Meridian Title. Where I was sitting there, I almost crapped my pants. I was so scared. It's a whole different game for me. But now it's second nature. It's easy, and I just tell people who are trying to get into real estate, just make the calls. You don't have to sound perfect. You don't have to sound
right.
great. You're going to sound goofy. Record
Yes,
yourself.
yes.
Figure out what you could do better. I always sometimes I'll record myself still and just review that because I'm always trying to improve, always trying to do better.
Yeah, agreed. And I would say that when I went through at Keller Williams, I went through Bold, which is I don't know if you ever heard of it or been through it. Have you been through it?
That Bold Trail, or is it something
Bold,
different?
well, no, that's actually that's a software by another
Okay.
company, but it was the subtitle is a life by design, not by default. So you're learning how to generate leads. You're learning a lot of different things. Yet what happened was you realized as you watch people that do it really well on videos, they are not having complex conversations in general. Depending on your demeanor, you need to have a good demeanor on the phone with them and speak clearly and get to the point before they hang up on you, right? Because they're like, what is this? And that type of thing. So timing's important. And you learn that, I think, over because of experience as things go. Yeah, but you watch people that do it at a high level, so to speak, or at least they're closing at a high level. They're not doing anything magic. It's really, like you said, it's a personal thing. And people, if you're warm and genuine, most of the time they're not going to hang up on you. Sometimes they will, but you're always going to have that. But right,
Yeah.
or they'll call you whatever,
Yeah.
a colorful language, and they're
Yeah.
done with you. And that's probably not you. It's more like them. You caught them at a bad time. So well, great. So you've done the dialing. You're on the phone consistently. How do you balance your time between setting up those conversations and getting out and doing networking and doing all the other things that you do?
So I'll be honest. I don't network as much as I used to.
Sure.
So and the reason why is because I think for what I do, it's very unique. That like I realize calling is my income like activity, right? So if I'm
Yep.
not
Yep.
calling, if I'm not on the phones, I'm not producing income. And networking's great. I still try to do it, but I don't do as much as I can as it. And I think it just also a personality thing too. Like some people love networking. That's what they're passionate about. It's great. Like Kathy Bonham, she's probably one of the best networkers I know. I mean, she kills it. She knows everyone. You know,
Yeah.
she knows all 500,000 people in Springfield. Um, but I like calling, and that's kind of where my income producing is. I still network. I still going out. I love meeting with new people. Figuring out how we could work together, how we could help. Especially when it comes to like the real estate industry. I love connecting with other agents, investors.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, that's true. And I think that networking for me, I've been genuinely doing networking within Springfield and Branson, et cetera, for 15 months, maybe 14 months. And honestly, haven't got a single sale. At the same time, I've met fantastic people, and a few people have given me, here's somebody. It was more of a lead than it was a referral. Okay, in that regard. So I would have to get them qualified and go through and all that kind of stuff. And they weren't a qualified lead at that point. Anyway, So those are the kind of things that I am experiencing as well. So you have to start going, okay, that's why I bought my dialer and I started hitting the phone. I'm just like you. I've got to hit that phone. That's where the money machine is, if you will, for me, because it is a contact sport. So, well, let's go from the lead gen side. Let's say now you've got someone, the interest level's high, the motivation's high. What's next for you?
Me is figuring out it's the problem solving, right? So after I kind of know what they need, what they want, that helps me determine kind of is A, B, C, D, the best solution, right? So it's about asking the good questions. It's about figuring out what sellers are needing, kind of what their timeline is, right? Because there's a lot of solution, right? If they have a lot of time, maybe not super motivated, agent could work, right? If they have a lot of equity in the property, they could afford to hire an agent, pay closing costs, all that stuff. Phenomenal solution. If maybe the property's in really bad shape, probably won't qualify for traditional like government backed loans or all that stuff, then maybe that may not be the best solution, especially if they're needing to sell quickly. So like I work with a lot of distressed people who are trying to sell as soon as possible, like probate, divorce, foreclosures. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, from my experience, listing a foreclosure, right? So I'll give you a good
Yes.
example. Yes. The first listing foreclosure I did here in Springfield, I listed it. It was just they bought it like 2-3 years prior. Didn't have a whole lot of equity. I listed the property. Banks typically say, "Hey, we need it listed for 90 days before we figure out what to do if it's a short sale or
Oh,
something else."
yep,
Right?
yep.
32 days go by, and I look at the public records and I figure out that the property that's listed is going back to auction, has an auction date. I call up the bank and I'm like, what the heck's going on? They're like, yeah, we just want our money back, right? So, I mean, there's not, it's one of those situations where, listing may not be great if you're on a time crunch.
Sure, sure.
So that's kind of why I do what I do, is because I realize it's about problem solving, figuring out, okay, if you need to sell quickly, and it really comes down to is price the most important thing for you, or is speed and convenience the most important thing to you, right? If price, then maybe listing it, maybe potentially doing a novation, if they don't want to deal with an agent. So like a novation is like if, say you have a house, say for whatever reason, you can't do a cash offer, right? For whatever reason, maybe it doesn't cover your mortgage. Maybe it doesn't cover like the medical bills, your debt, or whatever it is. Then I'll say, hey, I know you can't do this cash price, but maybe if I offer you like 15, 20, 30,000 more, is that something you might be open to? And a lot of times they say yes. So I say, listen, because it's at a higher price, I just can't make it work as an investor. So what I do is I'll market it to a retail buyer. So I'll hire an agent on your behalf. I'll pay all the marketing. I'll pay all the closing cost. If there's any repairs that need to be made, I'll do that. And the average sale time is 60 to 90 days. So that's like a good thing. If people just don't want to deal with an agent, for whatever reason. So that's just one option for people.
So if you say you're not dealing with an agent, but you are an agent, how is that?
So that's like, so I do a lot of things outside of Missouri as well.
Okay, so you're unlicensed in that state.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, okay, got it. Okay, got it. So that for it to work for you financially in general, what's the margin you'd need between like the selling price and what you buy it at? Is there a split, like a minimum amount or anything like that?
Not really. No, it's all numbers game. I mean, I've done so for like wholesale deals. Are you familiar with wholesaling?
Yep, yep.
Okay. So it's pretty much like you get a property under contract, right? And instead of you actually buying the house, you just sell the contract to an investor, right, for a profit. Um, so you're not dealing with like the rehab contractors, subcontractors, And that's a great way to get into real estate if you really have no money, really no experience. It's the simplest way. So, um, I mean, I've done deals like for very, very little, right? And I've done deals that were had a good margin, right? And it comes down to helping the seller. Like, money's great. I can't keep doing my business if I'm not making money. At the same
Sure.
time, it's about helping the seller. So I have to,
Okay.
I wouldn't say there's a, exact margin I go for. It really just depends on the area. If it's a super rural area, like I did a deal in Nevada, Missouri, super rural, the property, I don't know if
Yeah,
you're familiar with the area. It's just
I am. Yes.
yeah, there isn't a whole lot of movement in that area, as much as like Springfield. And that was very little, so it wasn't like a huge deal, like, oh, let me go retire now, or anything like that.
Yes. Yes. Very good. Yes, I've driven through Nevada many many times. Shown property in Nevada, actually, believe it or not, and like 100-year-old houses,
Yeah.
that type of thing. A lot of that going on there. A lot of abandoned properties that I saw along the way over there, etc. So, all right. So that give me an idea. I know the numbers may not be at the top of your head, but approximately in 2025. How many wholesale deals did you process?
2025 is hard. I probably did a little over a dozen, I think, in
Okay.
2025. Most of it was, so I quit my job at the end of 2024, and it took me like 6 months to figure out how to get in the industry, how to do it, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And then for the next like 4 to 6 months, it was really figuring out what I wanted to do. I think as for investors starting, it was a lot of like, I know for me, it was like the shiny objects. Like there's a lot of ways to get into real estate, a lot of things to do. What's the best one for me? So once I figured
Sure.
out and focused, okay, creative finance and a wholesale, just the two things I want to put all my time into it. That's kind of when I started doing more and more deals, right? Then toward the end of the year, my biggest obstacle of last year was toward like the summer to fall was more of like my automations and systems because I was starting to scale. It was figuring out how could I save a lot more time on doing things. If I fix in the certain systems and processes in place, it's going to make my life way easier. So a lot of that was just like a lot of last year was pretty much just learning, building systems, automations. How to scale, I guess. So now that I have it niched in, I'm doing on average like 2 to 4 deals a month,
Okay.
but it just
So
depends.
two to
Yeah,
four wholesale deals a month.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's a good volume. Yeah. Excellent volume. I would say on top of that. So, all right. Well, cool. And on the closing side of things, are you dealing a lot with trusts and maybe secondary owners where the property was in probate or anything like that? Is that a big part of your market or no?
I don't deal with a lot of like you talk about if I structure it like buying a property in a trust.
No, if it was, somebody's in stress, kind of a distressed seller from the standpoint of being, all the kids live in California, the house is in Arkansas, and they don't know what to do with it. They'll have you get rid of it for them, so they get the money and be done with it.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to that, yeah, it's just problem solving, figuring out what they need, what they want. If I could be a solution, then help them, and that's kind of the good thing. I mean, depending on the state, if you're wholesaling, you just got to learn the states, figure out the right disclosures. Like, I just sent over an agreement in Oklahoma, and they have like wholesale disclosures. They have extra documents, and so and each state's different, right? Like some
Sure.
states your real estate license. Other states you need a wholesale license. And others just need certain types of disclosures. So it's just depending on what market you want to do and make sure you're transparent about it. I think that's the big thing about it. Just letting the seller know, hey, this is what I'm doing. There might be a chance I buy a property. There might not be a chance that hey, it might not be a good fit. So I have someone else that could tackle it. I still want to help you.
Sure. Sure. Let me ask you this. Riley, are you doing any coaching on this or training, or are you building any curriculum on this since you've got good experience under your belt, or is it just for personal right now?
Just for personal right now, I lead a local beginners real estate group actually in Springfield. We meet on the third Wednesdays at Pasta Express on our public road. So
Hmm.
right across from like that Sips and Scoops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where
Yeah.
we meet, and it's really focused on just the fundamentals and the basics on real estate investing. Because when I got in, I don't feel like I had the knowledge, so a lot of it I had to learn myself, and a lot of it was like trial and error. Because I know a lot of like people who have been doing it for a while. A lot of times they're just so busy, so they don't have the time to necessarily help you or answer your questions or hop on a phone call. I try to be like that's a huge something that I value is I just want to be able to give back to people. So a lot of people in the group will just call me, help, like if they need a second pair of eyes to analyze a deal or just ask for my thoughts. We go over like certain types of like real estate investing contracts, analyzing deals, how to find deals, all that fun stuff.
Very good. Very good. Well, you seem to have a good teaching and coaching, ability. I'm sure you've heard that before. So, and you come across in a very knowledgeable way. So I think that would probably be a next step for you, definitely in your career as you grow and do that. At Pasta Express, do you meet in that small room by the restaurant or the big room?
The big room on the left. Yeah, you walk
Big
in.
room
There's
on the
that.
left. Okay, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
I've gone to several meetings up there, and some meet on one side or the other. So, and if somebody's interested in that, that's when once a month,
third Wednesday of every
third
month
Wednesday.
from
Okay,
5 to 7 p.m.
5 to 7 p.m. Okay, very good. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Is it your cell phone, email? What do you prefer?
Yeah, my text is fine. Yeah, my cell. Um,
Okay. Well, give us that here on the podcast so people can get a hold of you because there may be some people that are viewing it now that want to get a hold of you and say, hey, dude, I need either I have a property or something like that I want to talk to you about.
Definitely. Yeah, my cell is 206-280-5894. The Seattle number again. It's a 206-280-5894. So that's the best way to get hold of me. I'm pretty quick to respond if I'm not calling a seller.
Right. And like a lot of us, at least myself, I if a number calls that I don't know, a lot of times I'll just let it go to voicemail. So texting is usually best to start and say, hey, I saw your podcast and I'd like to talk to you about that. So Riley, it's great having you on. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to really express to us?
Um, Probably a couple different strategies for people to
Okay.
sell. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I focus on. That's very unique to what I do. So I'm going to try to give a couple examples. So we went over an ovation, right? Where that's higher than a cash offer if someone doesn't necessarily want to deal with an agent and is fine with netting X amount of money and having someone else kind of do all that back and stuff. Cash offer is typically closes in 30 days. That could be if someone's just buying it like a fix and flipper, or if someone's wholesaling it, right? And that's typically 30 days. Super quick, super easy. If people are, this is a big one for people who are like tired landlords, people who have vacant properties, people who don't necessarily need the money now, and maybe own it free and clear, then I highly recommend looking or just being open to the option of taking payments. So like owner finance and seller finance. I mean, there's a lot of benefits with that. A lot of times you could get more money than what you could typically get because you're saving closing costs or agent fees. So you're saving that expense. Then you're getting monthly payments, and there's a lot of tax benefits too. I don't want to go into that because I'm not a tax accountant or
Of course.
anything
Sure.
like that, CPA. Yeah, but there's a lot of ways you can kind of mitigate taxes when you're selling real estate over a period of time, or if you just have a property or two and is tired of it. That's a good one. So owner finance, seller finance, seller carryback. There's a lot of terms for that. But just if sellers need the money, don't necessarily need the money now, can wait over a period of time for whatever reason. Um, Great option. Another one is I think we talked about that property in Branson. Did we the one I bought in December? So I guess I'll tell the a story on that one. So that one, the seller had found out she had stage 4 cancer, and so she was super weak. She couldn't work as much. She was just a single lady with 3 dogs. She had a hard time, making her mortgage payments. So someone actually connected me to her, and to find out that she talked to several agents, and because she only bought it a couple of years ago, there's no equity in the house. And so what every agent was telling her was that, hey, you're gonna have to most likely come out of pocket, you know, trying to sell this property, right? And
Yep.
she, yeah, yeah, because it costs, there's the agent fees, there's the closing costs, and a lot of other costs that people don't think about is how long will it take to sell? If it takes 3 months or 6 months, the seller, the owner is still responsible for the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, the utilities. It's an extra expense that she just couldn't risk it, couldn't afford to even try to go that route. So I came in and I actually caught her up on her readers, her late payments. I gave her X amount of money at closing, and what I did was I actually gave her a month after, so I did a lease back. So she stayed in the property after we closed on the property to give her a little bit more time to move. And so the way we structured it is we actually bought the property subject to the existing mortgage. And so this is a great way to buy real estate. It's very different than assuming a loan, right? So if you assume, a
Sure.
lot of people, what assuming a loan is if you assume a loan, you have to go through a bank and pretty much just go through the whole bank process, right? You have to get your
Right.
credit pulled, make sure income is everything. You have to go through the whole bank process to get approved for that seller's, the owner's loan. With subject to is you're pretty much just taking it over. So the mortgage still stays in the seller's name, but the deed comes to the investor. Or, for example, in this situation, it came to me, right? So I didn't have to go through a bank, right? I didn't have to put 20% down. That was I think 60 grand on a 210,000 dollar property. I just don't have 60K laying around in my bank account or anything like that.
Right. Right.
So I mean, I bought that house maybe like 8K, 9K, right on the lake. So it was just a great win-win for everyone. It was. I mean, she was thrilled. We still talk. She's very grateful that she was able to, find a win, able to be done with the property, and walk away with some money. To set her up for
Yeah.
success. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So that was a simple process overall. It sounds like to do it, and most people wouldn't think of that. How did you learn about that process?
a lot of research,
What
networking,
did you?
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm huge on education, so I invest in education. I go to seminars to learn this stuff because I'm always, I don't know what I don't know. I'm always trying to improve, better myself, figure out how I could help people in other ways. So, subject to the existing mortgage is a great, powerful tool in the creative finance realm to buy properties and real estate. Great solution for people. There's a lot of, I guess, legalities in it too. So I don't touch the paperwork. I'm not a detailed person, one, and two, I just don't want to deal with it. So I actually hire for those specific deals. I just hire it out to a transactional coordinator to do the paperwork. There's extra documents you need, especially when you're taking over the seller's mortgage. You need the authorization release form,
Yeah.
so you could talk to the bank and all that stuff. The assignment of insurance if you want to change insurances, and there's a couple other documents you need. So,
Very good. Yeah, that's. I think that's the thing we talked about when I first met you was that process. Very intriguing, and I think you had done the spotlight that day. Uh, was there any other processes you want to talk about in addition to that?
I don't want to overwhelm people. I think that's good.
It's good. Okay.
I
All
could like
right. All
you and
right.
me. We could keep talking about real estate for hours and hours.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And yeah, it won't end here. We might need to have you on again to extend this process a little bit. So, okay, well, fantastic. Well, we'll wrap it up with that, and that's fantastic. You've been a wonderful guest. Thanks for appearing on the podcast, and I'm sure our viewers are going to get a tremendous amount of insight with your comments here. So, thanks again for being on it.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I was able to, be here, talk about what we do, talk about real estate. So it was
Good
great.
deal. See you soon. Take care.